Welcome to the Artcast. I'm Emily from the primary art class. Usually the work I do is around advocating for a good art education at primary school level. I work with schools, galleries and all sorts of organisations to help them provide a good art provision for primary school children. This is a short series of videos where I will be interviewing artists and creatives about their experience of art education, about their journey towards making their living out of creating art, about how they feel that art and creativity supports their sense of well-being, and about how it is to work as an artist. So if you're at all interested in art, the creative industries, being an artist, maybe you've got a little itch to become an artist yourself, these interviews might be interesting to you. My first chat was with Olivia Brotheridge, who's a friend of mine and a fantastic illustrator. I hope you enjoy. So I don't know if you want to start with describing a little bit about your current work and what you're doing at the minute.
Okay, well, I am an illustrator. I've somehow managed to specialise almost entirely in drawing maps, which started out doing a lot for kind of individuals who might like to have a map of their local area and have it sort of screen printed really nicely on their wall. And that's kind of expanded into working for a lot of businesses and like local councils and things, using it for tourism and sort of showing off initiatives. I get to include lots of little snippets of stories within the maps, and I think that really engages me. So I will interview people about the area, and they might say, oh, on the weekends we go to this market, and when I walk my kids to school, we walk past these buildings that we always notice and comment on. Or we might, once we went and saw the Queen's Flotilla and we had our dog with us, and I'll put those little things in. And but I do a lot of like hand painting with brush and ink, and then scanning things in. And then sometimes I've now got an iPad, so I'll draw straight onto the iPad.
And when you said that you got into doing maps, because you do, like, I really associate you with those lovely maps now, but what were you doing before that?
So when I graduated, I was working in lots of creative businesses. First, I moved to London to intern with the Big Draw, and I was doing kind of like, which is where we met, kind of, or through them.
Yeah.
So I was doing a lot of like organising project management type jobs in creative businesses, because I felt like illustration's quite a hard nut to crack. Like the first map that I did was when I just graduated. I'd moved straight to East London, and I was trying to find somewhere to live permanently. And during that time, during the first 6 months, I lived in about 6 different houses, from subletting for a couple of months to, somebody went on holiday for 2 weeks, so I'd stay in their room and stuff. And during that time, there was a magazine called Boat Magazine, and they did an open call for illustrators to come into their studio and create a map from memory, without reference material, of their neighbourhood. And I did this map, and they printed it in their publication as a double-page spread. And then I screen printed it, and I had it on my wall. And that's what led to doing more of those, because people would see it on my wall and say, oh, that's a really cool story, could you do that for us?
And your work really has that balance of still being sort of a map and fairly kind of like a good representation of the area, but with also that lovely personal touch. Have you ever had a time where you've thought, like, since leaving uni, where you've thought, you know what, this isn't for me, I'm going to go and get like a proper job? Or
I moved straight to London after graduating, and I didn't go fully freelance until almost 2 years ago. That's 100% fully only creative work. Felt like when I came out of uni, my portfolio was a little bit fine arty and not that relevant to commercial work and what people might, like a business to look at a piece of my work and be like, oh, that would be great for us, for our business. I think different unis will have different focuses on that, and I think our course was a little bit kind of angled to fine arty illustration, and so I did a lot of jobs that were either within really interesting creative organizations like the Big Draw. I worked for a branding agency. I worked for art galleries. I also worked as a PA because I thought I was going to have to leave London because I couldn't afford to live there. And alongside all of that, I carried on working, doing, printmaking, doing illustration, doing the odd commission, doing exhibitions. Finally, when I left London, I started totally focusing on that.
Yeah.
And now I've just moved back to London. I feel like it's unfinished business.
What do you think about that thing of, because when you're working and you've got kind of a steady income because you're doing a job which, like you say, might be linked to the creative industry but not necessarily your creative work, versus when you are solely making your income from doing your thing, how does that feel, like the difference of and linked to things like having to do sort of self-promotion and things like that?
Yeah, it's taken quite a lot of time. I'm a member of the Association of Illustrators, who offer guidance and advice for illustrators. There's tons of information on contracts and negotiating and fees. I think that the first thing when you are negotiating a project, and I am doing everything myself, and it is self-promotion, and I think contracts are so important, because if you don't have everything buttoned down, then something can go wrong later on. If you've got everything in your contract, if for example, if the client decides they don't want to go ahead with it anymore, but you've already got your contract in place, you might get, for example, 30% of the fee if they haven't even started the project. If they cut it halfway through and it's nothing to do with you, you might still get, you're kind of covered. And so that really helps with,
it's quite a learning curve, isn't it? I don't know about you, but
a massive learning curve.
Like in the last year or so, probably learnt to be more, there's this sort of slight cringe factor around asking for what you want in contracts, and I'm still really learning how to do that and be kind of like, it feels like you're being pushy, but it's not. It's like you say, it's securing, it's giving yourself some security, and that is what you have to do for yourself.
And it should give your client security as well. You put in your contract that you will deliver by this work by this stage. And they know what they're going to get from you.
So just to go back to the education bit, and obviously at uni you studied printmaking, and then what about in primary and secondary school? Do you have much kind of memory of feeling like you were an artist early on in primary school, and how
primary school?
Yeah, what are your memories, if any, of art at that kind of age?
Oh God, primary school. A long time ago.
I know.
My mum is an art teacher, so I definitely grew up being very creative. Art is just, it was always a subject that I felt very comfortable and confident, and maybe I was always, ahead in the class in art and creative.
You ever have a sense of, because within education often there's this sense of children are either creative or academic. Did you ever have a sense of that kind of?
I always had a sense that that's what I wanted to work hardest at. It's always what's driven me. I remember asking to do my three A-levels all in art subjects, and I think I got laughed at. They basically said no.
It's that sense that, you have to be a well-rounded person. It's okay to do a bit of an art thing, but you also have to offset it with some kind of academic.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting.
So your mum being an art teacher, so art kind of must have just felt like a part of everyday life. It wasn't like art was a subject at school. It was just part of your.
We're lucky that our parents really supported us in whatever we wanted to do. So me wanting to do art at home, they were like, great, whatever you want to do, that's fine. Kind of, I think, maybe it was maybe more normalized for me. But one thing that really inspired me was having people who have worked professionally within that subject and can talk about it.
Mm.
I had a graphics teacher who I really admired, and she would talk about industry and sort of, I really liked learning the craft side of things and really knowing how to do things. I think that's why printmaking and, you know, technical stuff does interest me.
Yeah.
We also had a couple of, there was a lady who was a professional graphic designer, and she came in and worked with us maybe once a week for a couple of months or something. And I was completely kind of inspired, and, you know, I didn't have any reference other than that. So having somebody come in and talk about, you know, in the industry, and I really loved that. And she would come around and critique our work. And it was really interesting at that younger age to have people coming in and showing you what was possible in industry.
And to feel like you were working in some kind of more a setting that wasn't just about school, that was in a more elevated setting.
Yeah.
I think there's a real power in that, in as much as you could, for example, have the best art teacher or best textile teacher, they're still within the system of the school. And I think there's a real power in having outside people.
I think by having somebody come, it makes it seem more real and more relevant, and you know, rather than it just being theoretical, it's like, oh, actually this is what it's actually used for and how it works in real life.
Yeah. And just, I always, I think it's really nice, you know, when I'm teaching, I always talk to the children about the day-to-day life, which is why something like talking to you is really nice, because just helping to kind of realise that there are people out there who their day-to-day is about creating, managing their finances, self-promotion. That is their job, you know. I think especially for primary school children, and maybe less so for secondary school children now, because the world has changed so much, but you sort of think of going to work as sort of, you know, going to work in a kind of off to the office kind of way, or, you know. So the more we know about the different types of opportunities there are out there, the more we can kind of really follow what feels good for us, and if that is something creative, then follow that. I wanted to talk to you a bit about also your process, your creative process. And I know that you, because we've spoken about it, that your family meditate, and maybe you meditate as well. And just a bit about how, if you think there's a connection between that kind of side of things and your creativity.
So I was brought up doing transcendental meditation, which my parents are super into. My big sister meditates a lot, my little sister doesn't at all, and I would do it occasionally. I've never been able to get into a routine with it until right now. We're in the corona lockdown, and I've never really suffered with like anxiety or feelings of just like tight chest, just all, you know, kind of often sort of on the edge of tears and kind of just really, really stressed. And so I've started meditating twice a day if I can, once a day definitely, and I feel fine, and it's really amazing. And it's like, I've never needed it, and I feel like at the moment I really need it. So I meditated just before this call, and it makes me feel so much better. Like I'll wake up with a tight chest, like, you know, worried, just feeling worried, and then I meditate and I feel okay. I also think it's really can be really helpful with creative practice, and always through the past, because I've always had this, and I'm lucky to have this tool to use. Sometimes if you're stuck with a creative problem, meditate, and maybe when you wake up at the end or come out of your meditation, the idea might have just come to you. Or you can think a bit clearer. And
this kind of stereotype normally goes with more kind of fine arts, expressive arts, but the idea of drawing on anxiety or drawing on stress or hard times for your creativity, have you ever found that to be an approach, useful thing for you?
What do you mean, like pouring it into your work?
So if you're in times of stress, or, you know, like the sort of cliche of the tortured artist, I guess, of being, you know, channeling some kind of stress or anxiety into your work, has that ever been
I don't, maybe at uni when my work was a bit darker. I was kind of, maybe I was more conceptual at uni, and it was kind of expressing sort of feelings or kind of vague conceptual things. Now, I don't think so. I draw and create for work. And so that kind of scratches that itch of wanting to create. However, it's really nice to have other projects on the side. At the moment, I'm like painting some little drawers, and I'm doing little illustrations on the front of each drawer of what that draw's for. So that's nice. And I think at the moment, a lot of people are turning to creative things. Everybody's baking. Everyone wants to, yeah. So
no yeast anywhere. I had to make hot cross buns with like this old yeast, and they looked really beautiful, but they were like scones. Except hard.
I suppose a lot of people are probably dealing with a lot of stress at the moment, and a little bit more time, and the fact that these kind of creative projects can really help people with their mental health. It is quite nice and meditative to just, you know, spend an evening. I find it really calming. Doing some painting for myself, not for work.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, the thing is, I think a lot of people, in my experience, especially adults, will say things like, oh no, I haven't done art since I was at school, or no, I'm not artistic or creative. But the thing about creativity is that it's more, like you say, it's not the pressure of the outcome, whether that's for work or because you want to produce something beautiful. It's more about the process of just sitting and creating something.
Yeah, it feels nice.
Yeah.
In a similar way to meditation and yoga or running, or, you know, you might sit there and focus your mind on something, just taking yourself out of your everyday stress and just focusing on something new is really, really nourishing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're right, it does feel like a similar, I've always wondered whether it takes you to a similar place that meditation does, because there's definitely a quality to it that feels the same, like the non-thinking and the kind of feeling in flow, that it's something outside of the physical body, and you're just kind of connected to something maybe a bit bigger, or a bit wider.
Your worrying mind probably just, you know, you forget about all of the stuff that you're usually, I think within meditation, it's your worrying mind that you're shutting up. It's that surface level thought, and you're just focused on something. And with meditation, it might be clearing your mind and getting really deep into a trance. And with, you know, painting, in a similar way, your everyday thoughts are gone because you're just focused on that task. And I suppose if you're feeling your nervous system's always a bit frayed because you're worrying about things, then that can calm down because you're not worrying at that moment. Yeah.
Are there any sort of rituals or processes that you have to get yourself in the creative mood? I don't know if you do experience or have experienced like creative block maybe, or I guess, is there anything you do if you're feeling particularly blocked, and just in your day-to-day when you sit down to create, is there anything that, you know, you have to have something in place or do?
Sometimes when I finish one project and I've got to start another one, I have a fear of starting, and I will find myself, it's procrastinating. I will definitely procrastinate. I'll clean everything until I think I've got a perfect working environment and there's no other excuse. And then I'm sort of, you know, everything's organized around me and I can start. I suppose it's like
in that because I've heard that from a lot of people, and I think I do that myself. I sort of make the conditions perfect or do something else. But do you think that within that time there's something you are kind of preparing, it's just you're not doing the thing, but somehow in your mind you're
psyching yourself up for also, because when I do get into a project, it can, especially if there's a deadline and stuff, it can completely take over my life. Like I might not answer an email for a few days, or you know, I might ignore cleaning and stuff for a little while. So in between projects, maybe I'll try and do all of the little bits that I've been ignoring and that I know I'll ignore once I get completely submerged into a project. So there's a lot of preparing myself, because I know that once I focus, I'll be totally focused and I won't look at anything else. You know, sometimes when I finish a project, I feel creatively drained. And like I've just been pushing out all of my creative energy, and sometimes I need to sort of fill up again. So apart from like resting, you know, preparing my environment, doing the bits and bobs that need doing, there's also kind of maybe going to a gallery or looking at some really lovely creative people's websites, or looking through Instagram, or maybe, you know, going to a life drawing class, or doing a little bit of a personal project, or I don't know, something, things that kind of nourish me again, so that I can, you know, go on pushing out.
That does make sense. Yeah, that thing of feeling creatively exhausted is definitely something that I hear a lot as well, that you sort of feel that you're just spent and needing to recharge and just sort of pause back in. Really. And that's why sometimes it is, like you say, it's nice, yes, to go to a gallery or do something, but also to do something a bit different, because that sort of, like, it somehow refreshes you, doesn't it? And it gives you like a bit of energy.
It'll give your map making muscle a rest while you're doing something else, and then you can come back to it.
And so you're working on projects, and do you still you said you're doing the cupboard and things like that. Do you make a concerted effort to still do your own kind of side projects alongside things?
I'm trying to. Having just moved into this flat, there's always things to do in the evening, because, you know, we've kind of deep cleaning everything, and and I've got tons of other ideas of things that I want to do. I want to make like cushion covers, and I want to learn embroidery, and
I know
PK, and
how do you manage that? Because as a creative person, like, I think I have so many ideas for projects going on at one time in my head, and then new things come along. How do you, obviously you have paid work, which probably has to take priority.
Yeah.
Then how do you kind of organise your thoughts and actions around, I want to learn a bit more about this, or I want to do this? How do you?
I guess I've got a list of things that I feel like I really want to do, but those will not take priority over work. I think I am quite worried about being able to keep getting work. I'm lucky that I'm working at the moment, but I definitely lost a few really big jobs that I should have got, because they're in the tourism industry.
Are they on hold, or are they cancelled?
I don't know. Some of them are on hold, and I think there's a likelihood that they will happen. There's a big one that I don't think it will happen. I'd love it if it did. So I'm still trying to, I'm still quoting for jobs, which is really great. And I've had a couple of bits come through. I had one thing come through new, and another thing I've just quoted for, and I'll find out if I get it. I'm trying to sort of offer longer licenses, so that if people think they might not be able to launch something this year, they know they can next year, or something like that.
How much of the work you get is word of mouth, and how much kind of self-promoting and networking do you?
I do a lot of Instagram. Probably not as much as I could, but enough to get me some work through Instagram. I think people search like Illustrator, Map Illustrator, Illustrator London, or whatever, and they'll find me. I hadn't done much else other than that. And then I made some postcards of one of my pictures, and on the back hand wrote it. I first sent out postcards to creative agencies, and I found it horribly cringy. But I realized that the reason I felt it horribly cringy was because it's such a niche. How likely is it that a creative agency wants a map illustrator? So then I thought about what businesses I've worked for before, and what businesses would quite likely want a map illustrator, and I sent out about 8 postcards, and I got a few really good jobs. So just really targeting, the right people. Like I wrote to Hackney Council, and I got an email like the next day saying, yes, we want exactly what you just said. When can you come in?
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
So cool. I know I didn't manage to see it out in the flesh. So it was one of the big digital, loads of the big digital.
Yeah. They're yeah, huge, right on the street. So it was really sort of surreal to stand next to my work. There's so much that's, you know, in my heart about these areas. I really enjoyed doing the maps. I put my all into them, but I also, you know, I put my personal experiences in them, and that makes it, you know, it's like almost a visual diary of my life when I'm in Hackney. It's sort of all that, you know, obviously I'm including a lot of other stuff, and there's a lot of sort of discussion with the client about what they want on there, and then representing the different cultures who live here. There's a lot of that, and but I also, you know, I'll hide a few little things that mean a lot to me in there, and I think it adds to the personality.
It's really nice to just hear about your processes and a bit about your kind of journey to where you are, because I definitely, like, when we first met, like you said, it was at a sort of the Big Draw meeting, and I was there as a teacher, and you were working for them, and I think you were still not fully doing your own thing, but I think I remember us talking then about your personal work as well, and I've just sort of, you know, we're not in constant communication, but I've definitely seen this, like, you know, real journey of your work, and it's really really cool. What are have you got like goals? Do you set yourself little, like, oh, I want to get this, I want to do this? Or
I've had to think about what I would do if work dries up while I'm in isolation, and like how I might be able to, you know, develop my portfolio to get work, you know, if nobody wants maps, which hopefully they will continue to want maps, just maybe not for the same purposes. Yeah, I want to do other things within, like, travel illustration, like city posters and things. I might want to do kind of information design or editorial, especially if work in maps specifically was to dry up. I think information design, editorial, both really important at the moment.
Any final words on if there are, you know, young children out there, or even adults out there, who feel that they want to pursue something in the creative industry, but maybe the support network isn't there for them, or they're just not sure whether it's the sensible choice, or whatever those sorts of, you know, thoughts might be? Any, you know, tips or words for those sorts of people who have a creative pursuit inside of them, but they're not fully committed to following it?
There's creative for work, and there's creative for yourself.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking about doing creative things, then you can do either of those things.
Yeah.
If you want to work in the creative industry, I don't think it's totally necessary to have a degree. Anybody's career these days, and the way people make a living, is much more fluid and much more. You'd be so surprised how people make money, and you don't have to do it in a conventional way anymore.
And I think what you said about having people around you, either friends or just having some people around you who are doing the thing or in the field already, it's really inspiring, and it kind of raises the bar a bit.
And reaching out to other creative people, and building, you know, sort of friendships where you maybe swap ideas and challenge each other. I think I always had something niggling in the back of my head. So when I'd graduated and I was working for creative businesses, but not actually being creative myself, I always had this niggling thing where I was like, but I feel like I could make really nice things, and I'll never know if I don't try. And also, the creative industry is a massive part of the economy.
Exactly.
It adds so much to people's lives. It makes people happy. And it's not just about decorating stuff, it's about communicating.
How's your fringe doing? Because I'm going crazy with mine. I really need to cut it.
I was literally gonna say that on my list of things to do is cut my fringe.
Go yourself.
I actually pinned it up yesterday.
Oh, I like that. I used to do it. I've basically had this hairstyle since I was little, and I've had a few goes at cutting it myself, and it never works out.
Are there any like tutorials? Surely there's some kind of like how to cut your fringe yourself.
Yeah, there must be.